Hello, darlings. Hi. It is time for my April wrap-up. It's super late because it's already like May 8th-ish, but you know what else? Let's just do this. So I'm going to start off with the books that I DNF'd, and I'm going to go to 1-star, 2-star, etc. Let's get to it. Ain't nothing to it, but to do it. Yeah, I said it. Alright, so firstly, both of these were buddy reads. I buddy read with Derby from Derby Lane Reading, and Leanna from Leanna's Library, and Bethany from Beautiful Bookish Bethany, The Falconer by Elizabeth May. I started it after they all did, and most of them were horrified, and then I just was, I made it like 10 chapters in. Now, it's not a bad book, but it's not what I thought it was either. The Falconer is this book about this girl who lives in like Victorian times, who can see fae where other people can't, and even though she is supposed to be genteel and a member of the ton and all that other fun stuff, she takes on this very unladylike hobby of defending people from these fae and like hunting and murdering fae, so to speak. So it sounded pretty badass, but I didn't like, there's also steampunk in here, which I didn't expect. In this, I like steampunk normally, but this is like very, very, very YA steampunk, and it's almost like an afterthought. It's like random kind of placed in steampunk that didn't mesh well, so it was just like, it almost felt like disjointed, and it bugged me enough that I just didn't pick it up, and I really didn't care for, I don't even know her name, Chow? Whatever. The main character, I really didn't care for the main character in this book. There was one character that I really liked, but he was like a side character, so to speak, and I just didn't really like it. There's nothing wrong with it. I think I'll read it at another time. It just wasn't what I wanted in that moment, so maybe I'll try to read it again later. Then, also a buddy read, Bethany from Beautiful Bookish Bethany is hosting this like Witchland series read-along, and we all were reading Truth Witch in the first go-round. This is in the DNF pile because I'm actually finishing it now, and I didn't finish it in April. So it's not I didn't read it at all. This is actually I did DNF it before and never picked it back up. So this is my second attempt at reading it, and it's taken me a really long time because I still don't really like it all that much. So we'll see. I'm not finished with it. Alright, on to 1 stars. There was The Queen of All That Dies by Laura Thalassa. Now this book was one of my most anticipated. It looked so badass. I bought the entire series on Kindle, and then I read it and was like, what is this? This book is set in a dystopian world. Basically, it's Earth as we know it. Earth has just been divided into just 2 hemispheres, just Eastern and Western. One of which is ruled by like a council democracy type dealio, and the other is ruled by this undying king who is like 60-ish years old, if not more, but whatever. He's supposed to be like kind of immortal. That's the myth we're working with going into the beginning of this book, is that he's just old AF. The main character, whose name I can't remember, is a soldier, like a literal like Army, Air Force, I don't remember which type or whatever. They like made this giant military conglomerate type dealio. She is an actual government soldier. Her dad is pretty high ranking soldier, so she's supposed to be pretty badass. This bitch is whiny as fuck. What bugged me about it is that so many people in the reviews are like, she's so badass. She is not. She's badass in the way that Selena was badass in the first On the Glass book. That made me irritated. She's badass because everybody kept saying she's badass. I didn't see her do nothing badass. There was no badassery. There was no badassery. I was missing the badassery. She threw an extreme, ridiculous, excessive amount of tantrums. I mean, like legit tantrums for a soldier who has been raised in this life from birth in a dystopian society where nobody can really afford to be childish anymore. She is very, very childish. Alright, like I said, she's been trained in the military. Her job, we see her, she's kind of taken over a job as emissary. So between both of the hemispheres, her job, handed down to her by her dad and the person who's like higher ranking over her dad's like a several star general, and this guy's like over him 2-3 star. I don't know. I don't remember. The job they handed her as as emissary, very important job. It's a government job. Are you ready? Are you ready? To go play nice with the king and screw him so that he will give the other hemisphere what they want. That was a plot. That was the big spy move. Slick, girl, you slick. So she was supposed to seduce the king into signing a peace treaty. The politics were flimsy, they were corny, they were illogical. I'm not even one for a lot of politics in the books that I read, and I was just like, this is bad. Duh. It just is bad. And then the science in the world is like basically the entire world has been nuked. That's where this like apocalypse kind of thing came from. The whole world has been nuked, but they're good now. There's everybody gets cancer, but that is the only downfall from literally the entire world. The entire world got nuked, and a lot of people get stomach cancer. That was it. Basically, this girl is sent to this king, right? And I told you she's supposed to screw him, get him sign this peace treaty, the ceasefire, all this fun shit. He maneuvers it so that they have to marry. So it's supposed to be like this Wrath in the Dawn type hate to love, Beauty and the Beast kind of trope. Homegirl got Stockholm Syndrome bad. Like y'all said, Belle from Beauty and the Beast got Stockholm Syndrome. This bitch wrote the definition. She is the initial person that Stockholm studied and made the term up for, okay? She is the textbook Stockholm of Stockholm. Like, he did some horrible things to her. He killed people close to her, in front of her, didn't apologize for it, didn't have a good reason for it. It wasn't even, I'm sorry baby, it had to happen, I know this hurts, but no, he just flat out was a jackass. It was like, oh, there's your friend, oh, there's your family member, oop, there's your other friend, is that blood on your face, did you get his brains on you, sorry baby, come on, let's go, we late for dinner. So that said, the romance was also ridiculous, and the king was responsible for that nuking of everything. He basically committed worldwide genocide, and she was in love with him. Not, I'm in love with you and these things had to happen because, but nope, he literally, like, the reason that he had for committing basically genocide on a worldwide epic level were so stupid and so selfish. It was like a corporal gain kind of a thing that caused him to basically kill off everybody for his own personal pocket increase. And she was just like, that's bae. I hated the book so much it's not even fucking funny. So I typed a pretty lengthy Goodreads review for it. I'll link it down in the description box. Then there was Beyond Shame, which we're into the 2-star books. So there's Beyond Shame by Mikey Rocha. I will actually not talk about this just yet because then I get to the 3 stars, and this is the book that I read first, and it will kind of explain, even though Beyond Shame is a prequel for Ashwin, also by Mikey Rocha. Ashwin is the first book in the Gideon's Riders series. It is a urban fantasy / paranormal romance kind of a thing. It kind of blends the line a little bit. In this book, it's also post-apocalyptic type dystopian kind of world, but it is adult instead of YA, so I expected much better. I didn't get all that much better, to be honest. This one I gave 3 stars. I did like it, however, it had a trope that I tend to find very difficult to deal with, and it's the whole, like, emotionless soldier. Like, not that I'm cold-hearted, but that emotions have been bred out of me, and what are feelings? I don't know what those are. So we have this soldier who was like a bred super soldier who interacted with our heroine before and kind of overcame his programming and his training and started having feelings for her, and then abandoned her basically on the battlefield because she wouldn't go with him right then and there. And he was like, she's making me like refute my training, my programming says that I have to get her out of danger, and she fought me on it because she's a war doctor, she's a military doctor, and she was helping an injured person. She was gonna go with him, but she was basically saying, wait, give me a minute. He took that to mean like, I'm not going with you. And not only so, he was just like, okay, so I kind of circumvented my programming, and I've gone against my training for you, and now you don't even want to come with me. He took it as a no, not never. So he went back to his base, soldiers, bosses, people, commanders, whatever, and had them wipe him, and then condition him to like feel pain or whatever when he was near her, or felt positive emotion for her, to kind of like, it's kind of like an anti-Pavlovian type response thing. So there was that, and so I kind of had to deal with that. His whole like, well, how do I know if I feel this? What is this? I don't know what this is. And my brain always goes, but you feeling confusion, and that's a feeling. But you got sarcasm, and that comes from like a feeling. Like, you just have no feelings, you're flat. There is no, I work in psych, I work with people that literally just cannot feel emotion sometimes, and they are flat. There is no sarcasm, there is no dry wit, there is no humor of any kind. So dry, sarcasm, snark, smart ass, none of that. Anger, confusion, you don't have any of that. It's just, do this. Okay. Do that. Okay. And it's almost to the point where it's like they don't make decisions unless you tell them what to do. Like, this is what you're supposed to do and this is why. And you just follow orders, because going against them requires like feeling. I'm not going to do this because I feel a way about it. It's just, it always just kind of nitpicks at me, and I really don't like it. But, and of course, because if you do it correctly, it makes the character kind of dry. And he was a little dry because he didn't have emotions for like the first 2/3 of the book. So, I gave it 3 stars. I liked the story. It was kind of like, there was some intrigue in there. And basically, the world has been divided up into like 5 or 6 sections or so. I was going to say quadrants, that's 4, whatever. So, like 5 or 6 sections. And each section is it's like sector 1, sector 2, each sector it's like its own little world, and they have their own little rules, but the rulers is not really like a democracy. They're ruled by like these motorcycle gang type structures. So it sounded interesting, and the world is interesting, and I liked it, and so I went back and read the prequel, which takes us to Beyond Shame, which I gave 2 stars, because Beyond Shame is basically straight smut parading as a book with an urban fantasy plot, which is not bad. I haven't read those, but this one was just a bit much. This one was just straight smut. So this one takes place in a different sector, and this sector is like very hedonistic. So the main heroine came from Eden, which is supposed to be like it sounds, Eden. You're not supposed to feel lust or any of these other things. And when they started discovering that she had like sexual urges or whatever, they sent her out or kicked her out. So she found her way to this other sector, like sector 6 or sector 5, whatever the hell, and got in with this motorcycle group. And before he would basically claim her, which involved collaring, but it was a tattoo collar, so it was like a BDSM, but it was a really bad BDSM. Before he would claim her, he basically was like, but I need to know that you have experienced all the things that you haven't experienced, so I know you won't cheat on me later or want them later with someone else, or that you know that I'm the one that you want. And so basically, it was just nonstop smut. Like, sleep with this person, sleep with this dude, sleep with this girl, sleep with this other couple with me at the same time, and it was just a lot. Then there was Grimm, which is the first book in the Tonian series. This one is an indie published book by M.K. Idom, I think is how you say that. This one is a sci-fi romance in which the main characters, it's there's a word for this. It's the two that's different. It's like, whatever. Anyway, the men rule like the politics and stuff, but it's a matriarchal society is what I was trying to say. It's matriarchal and then patron something. I'll think of it in a minute. Anyhow, in this one, basically, this planet, the Tonian planet, is, for whatever reason, their women can't have children anymore, so they have to go get women from Earth, and the main character, who even though is a king of his own planet, since he has a scar on his face, he is considered unfit to rule because of the laws of their planet. If you got scarred, that you're a bad protector, nobody should have been able to touch you, even though he was jumped by 8 people at once and attacked in basically a by political type court intrigue situation. So it was like an assassination attempt, but he still, like, even though he killed all 8 of them, you're unfit to rule, so he wasn't allowed to have a woman. But the woman that they picked up didn't want to be there, and she wasn't supposed to be there because they're supposed to be picking up women that didn't have kids, and she had kids, and blah 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 blah. It was a corny sci-fi plot, as the sci-fi romance plots go. Like, our women can't provide us children, we must steal women from another planet, and they fall in love. It's basically the plot on that one. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Then there was our 4 stars. Firstly, there was Lord of the Fading Lands by C.L. Wilson. This is the first book in the Terran Soul. One of the main characters is a fae who has like this beast spirit inside of him as well, so he can shift into like this Terran beast. It's like half panther, flying panther, Pegasus type thing. I don't know. He's like the last one alive. So he finds his mate, who is basically in the middle of another like whole other round of fuckery in the human world. He goes there for something or other because this magical orb scrying prophet oracles, the oracle orb thing, told him that he needed to go there. He went there, discovered his mate was there, and he was butthurt about it because his chosen mate, not the one that was actually like his mate, but one he took because he couldn't find his soulmate. So basically, like, his wife instead of his soulmate had died horribly in this epic battle that caused him to basically go nuts and kill everybody. And then he went into hiding for like a millennia or some shit, and there are songs about it, and it's like an epic fantasy thing, like Odyssey type story scenario. And then so it's a pretty big deal when he comes out of his hiding. He meets his mate at a parade basically for his arrival, and as you know, most shifter stories do when you meet their mates, they're just a little feral because that mating instinct takes over, and so he scares the fuck out of her, and she really doesn't want him, even though she was a bit forced into an engagement to a man she didn't want as well, and she's kind of caught in between that. So we deal with that in this book. Their romance is not all the way resolved, their story in this one, so it kind of breaks off. We have this big threat that's coming back, and he's fighting that and also trying to find his mate and whatever. It's actually really, really well written, and I really like it. The only thing I didn't like is how much their romance is dragged out. Like, get their romance together, and then the rest of the books deal with like the spies and the big bad that's coming and whatever. I don't want to deal with like both of them constantly. Like, if the romance is still not resolved by the end of book 2, I'm gonna be kind of butthurt. But it's really good, and I enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I have Wicked Cravings, which is the Phoenix pack number 2. This was a reread for me. No, I lied. It wasn't. I skipped this one and went to book 3. So I went back and read it. It is a shifter romance. It is paranormal, like a standard paranormal romance series in which each book is each couple within the pack getting mated. There's no giant overarching like big bad thing to fight. It's just, you can read them out of order, you can read them whatever, and it's really not a big deal. So in this one, Jamie assimilated into this pack, and Dante, who is an enforcer in this pack, she used to basically like be in love with him from the time they were kids, and then when she moved into this pack where his is, because their pack split up when they were younger, her basically crush kept up, and he's just being really rude, ignoring her. She overheard him saying that I don't want her because she's fat, or she's, you know, not shaped like a woman, or whatever. I forget, whatever, some rude thing he said, even though he didn't necessarily feel that way. He just is one of those I don't do relationship type men. So she backed off and started flirting with other people, and then he was like, no, you mind, where you going? So we got that kind of like, it's a cliche story, but it was enjoyable. I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. Then there was Grimm Space by Anne Aguirre. This is the first book in the Samantha Jax series that, even though I like this one, I will not be continuing. Grimm Space is a sci-fi with a little bit of romance. It had more romance than I thought in it, but the romance, I liked it. It still wasn't heavy romance. Romance is not the primary plot to this one. So Samantha Jax is a jumper, I think, which basically means that she can move about within Grimm Space, which is kind of like warp speed kind of a thing. So she can actually lock into the ship and become part of the ship, and then she has a navigator, and they're both kind of like symbiotic in that they see through each other's senses, and they form almost like one being. He pilots the ship using her eyes and senses and feelings to navigate through Grimm Space, and these jumpers are the more you navigate through Grimm Space, every time you go, there's like a chance that you won't make it back out alive. It just sucks the life out of you each and every time that you go. So they kind of have, the better you are at it, the shorter your lifespan. Samantha Jax is one of the people who basically should have died long ago, and when we come into the story with her, she's being held in this military compound because she was on this mission with this giant elite cruise ship with all of these like VIP people. And basically it looks like she purposefully crashed the ship going into or coming out of Grimm Space. And her pilot, who's basically the other half of her, because like I said, it's a very intimate kind of like symbiotic relationship, died. So she's almost a little broken from that, and she can't remember what happened, and she's the only survivor. And it's kind of like a corporate intrigue plot. Almost like Illuminate, but a little bit more adult. I liked it. I didn't really have any problems with it. I enjoyed it. I binge read it. But the reason I won't be continuing with the series is that when I went forward and read the rest of it, like, stupid stuff happens with their romance, and they just keep bumping heads over little shit just to cause tension between them, I guess, so they're not boring, instead of them fighting stuff together, like say Mercy and Adam in Patricia Briggs series, or Charles and Anna in the Alpha and Omega series by Patricia Briggs, or Kate and Kern in the Kate Daniels series by Lona Andrews. Instead of like coming together and fighting stuff together, they're constantly fighting each other, and it looks like it gets real old because they're like 6 or 7 books. She ain't got time for that. I don't like that back and forth romance over and 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 over. I don't like it. Then there was Mate Claimed by Jennifer Ashley. It's just part of the Shifters Unbound series. It's a paranormal romance series in which shifters are out. They're a known thing to the public, but the public has basically, they're trying to classify them as endangered species, which means they can be like be tagged and all that horrible shit. But for them now, they have corralled them into these shifter towns and given them collars that are embedded into their neck, and they're imbued with fey magic as well as tech. That means any aggression they feel, once their adrenaline starts rushing, the collars shock them and it hurts horribly, and it's supposed to keep them from hurting people. They're not allowed to have certain kind of jobs. They're not allowed to have houses bigger than, you know, XYZ. They're not allowed to accumulate a certain amount of money. So basically, they live their whole life in secret anyway, even though they're out. They just agreed to be out to protect themselves because they were killing each other off, living with the old ways, like challenging each other, killing each other, and etc. They agreed to let themselves come out and be captured and be collared so that they can basically get their numbers back up, and they're long-lived, basically almost immortal. So they're like, this is just a drop in the bucket. We deal with it for now. This is not going to last forever. We just need to get strong again as a group of shifters. So that's like the whole series. Each individual one is a romance, each individual book that takes place in sometimes different shifter towns. The main ones are in Austin. I think this one was not, though. I think it was in Vegas or something like that. But in this one, the shifter leader, Eric Warden, comes across Iona Duncan, who is a half shifter, so she's supposed to be collared. And the fact that she isn't means later on, if she's found, she can be put into a collar, but whoever hid her and whoever had her and didn't report her can be executed. So she stays secret to protect her family. And it's the romance between them. He's constantly trying to bring her into the shifter town, and meanwhile, a displaced shifter town, like a shifter town that got, for whatever reason, the government tore it down, made them move. So they moved these wolves in with these wildcats, which was stupid, even though both shifter leaders told them, hey, this ain't gonna work. And they're like, whatever, y'all are animals. Y'all can live with each other with no problem, even though it's literally like cats and dogs. So he's trying to deal with that and then keep Iona hidden because she is a single female shifter who is unclaimed as well as unregistered, and that can cause a lot of trouble with bringing in this pretty dickish other leader. So that was it. I liked it. I liked it a lot, but this is a series that I have several of. I read them out of order because you only get spoiled very minorly for little stuff. It's not a big deal to me anyway, but yeah, so there's that. Then there was my 5 stars, and the ratings I didn't change because they're rereads. So there's NickSIA, which this is an arc of. This I did not read. Obviously it's been out for like quite a while, but I read this because I want to read NickSIA Unleashed, which I have an arc for, and NickSIA Unleashed comes out I think the end of this month or June or July. I'm not sure. I can't remember. NickSIA is so freaking good. It's by Scott Rankin, who is a I think he's a high school teacher, North Carolina. He wrote this book about this main character, Emmett, who basically grew up in Detroit in this futuristic setting, and Emmett gets offered this job by this big corporation, and basically they're saying, you do this and you get good at this and you beat out these other people. There are like 12 of you or however, only 10 of you can go to this other planet. It's going to be a long journey, but if you do this thing that we need you to do, we'll give you a whole lot of money. You'll take this windfall home, basically. And they picked all of these basically poor children and pit them against each other to use them to be able to go to this planet and mine the substance NickSIA. It is this really weird kind of almost like a Mary Sue type substance. You can make it into anything. There are of course some rules and some bounce back. It's not of course completely rule-less. You can just do anything you can imagine with it, but for the most part it's almost limitless. You can make clothes out of it. They put it in the jet fuel. They put it in just all to make the ships faster. That they can make weapons out of it. You can put it in your hand and think of a thing and it changes shapes. It's really pretty fucking cool. What I also like about it is that it very accurately captures the voice of like these kind of hardened kids who have grown up in these urban and ghetto societies, as well as like these poor children from other societies. He basically I want to say I heard that he wanted his students to see that there can be a fantasy book with children who look and act like them, and they pulled it off very accurately. There are so many things about these characters that I read and reminded me of my childhood because I grew up in Chicago, and it just It's so good, and it's very exciting. It's very Red Rising in the way that it has like all these plot twists and stuff, but it is YA. It's not quite as brutal, but there are a lot of like really smart and really cool twists, and I really enjoyed this book. So I was supposed to be reading NickSIA Unleashed. I actually forgot that I had it until like just right this second when I picked up NickSIA for this haul wrap up. Whoops. Then there is another arc I got, which is Wild Hunger, which is the first book in the Heirs of Chicagoland by Chloe Neal. So Chloe Neal writes the Chicagoland Vampires series. This is like a sequel series to that. This is about like their kids, is why it's called Heirs of Chicago. I don't think it comes out yet. I will put the date up here or down in the description box when I find out when it comes out. But basically, it was approved the day it was approved on NetGalley. I downloaded it and read it, and I really, really enjoyed it. A lot of people didn't like the Chicagoland Vampire series originally. I didn't read it, so I don't know. But knowing now what character it was about and seeing bits of how weird and odd kind of this character was, and not in a quirky, cute way, but in a just kind of way, I can see why it would have annoyed people. But this one, it's so good. So I really like the main character is basically the heir or the descendant of this pretty powerful vampire couple in Chicago, and because of the circumstances of her birth, she's like this monster that's attached to her, so to speak, this weird dark magic that encompasses her and takes her over and just makes her violent, which of course if you're trying to live amongst humans and you have all this like tangle of politics and whatever to be able to interact with the humans and the fae and the vampires and the other shifters and blah 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 blah, she can't afford slip-ups like that, so she allows herself to be sent away to school, boarding school I think in Paris, and then she volunteers her time to be able to stay there and learn, because she's trying to keep her family safe and find out what the hell's going on with her and control this thing. But she has to come back because of her job as an emissary. She's thrown in the middle of this big giant mess of someone trying to stir up problem. It's basically like peace talks, but whereas in Undying King, whatever the hell that book was called, they were stupid, these are actually pretty good. So there's peace talks not only between like vampires and different shifter clans and fae, but they're peace talks between like the Americans and the Europeans and like Australians and Spaniards, all these different cultures, as well as these different like subsets of supernatural creatures in these different cultures. So you have all these coming together for these peace talks, and I think it was pretty well done. Just my humble opinion. And then not only that, but Elisa, who is the main character, is kind of, like I said, fighting this like monster thing and trying to protect her parents, because of course there's certain rules you have to obey as far as the human government goes, as far as conduct, not attacking or killing or doing this, that, and the other. But someone kills someone in order to disturb the peace talks, and she steps in because her parents are not allowed to interfere because of their position, but because of who she is and where she works and etc. She's trying to maneuver, like sneakily maneuver around the rules to save her parents and deal with this monster that's growing in her. And there's a romance, like kind of a budding romance between her and one of the shifters. Is really well done. It's like a slow burn, and I'm really butthurt because not only do I have to wait for this to come out, because I don't think it comes out for like a month or more, but then I gotta wait for the sequel to see what happens with them. But I really, like I said, I really like this one, and I felt like it was very quirky and fun. I gave it 4.5 stars. I was expecting just to like it, but I loved it, and I will link the Goodreads review for this down below. And then lastly, I reread, I did not change from my initial ratings, Hunting Ground, which is book 2, I want to say, and then Fair Game, which is book 3 in the Alpha and Omega series, which is the spin-off series to the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. The Alpha and Omega series follows Anna and Charles, Charles being like Mercy's kind of foster brother type situation. I can't tell you what these two books are. I can't tell you what this one is without spoiling this one. I can't tell you what this one is without spoiling Alpha and Omega. So if you like werewolf, and this is urban fantasy, not paranormal romance, so they deal with the same couples through all of the books, and the highlight, the romance takes a backseat, and the highlight is the stuff that these couples deal with. So if you like those kind of books, these are series that I have always and will always recommend because they're freaking phenomenal. I read them in November, and I'm rereading them in April and I guess May, because I have to read the last 2. Even though I just read the last 2 not that long ago. So that is it for my April wrap up, guys. I am about to be late for work, so I will talk to y'all later. Bye.